I'd like to introduce our co-moderator, Susan Aldridge. She is the Executive Managing Director of Site Selection at ESRP and specializes in securing optimal locations for clients globally. And so she's a subject matter expert in our topic today. She's also a recognized speaker and author featured in Metroplex publications such as DCEO, D Magazine, and Biz Now. I'd like to introduce our panelists. First, Chris Strayer joined the Fort Worth Chamber of Commerce staff effective February 12, 2018 as the Senior Vice President of Business Attraction, Retention, and Expansion. With a background in land use planning, civil and environmental engineering, construction and development, and government at the local and state level, Strayer understands the process that companies must embark upon for the expansion of their organizational footprint. I have a fun fact about Chris as well. As a child, Chris was scolded by Jack Hanna for throwing rocks at turtles at the Columbus Zoo. In his defense, he was just skipping rocks, but Jack thought he was throwing them at the turtles.
The turtles just happened to be in the general vicinity of where I was skipping the rocks. But, you know, not every day you get scolded by Jack Hanna. It's great.
Harry Whalen serves as the Director of Economic Development International for the Frisco Economic Development Corporation. His responsibilities are the attraction of new national and international headquarters and industrial development locations investments in Frisco. Harry has been an economic development professional for over 45 years, working with small to large investments from around the globe to invest in the United States. We also have a fun fact about Harry. He worked as a steeplejack in college, following in the footsteps of his grandfather and father. He painted flagpoles, radio towers, and grain elevators. And his grandfather was actually known as the human fly. John Jacobs is the Executive Vice President, Economic Development for the Richardson Chamber of Commerce and for the Richardson Economic Development Partnership, a joint city-chamber effort. John directs the day-to-day activities of marketing for the city of Richardson, recruiting businesses to the city, assisting local companies with expansion needs, and helping startup companies. This is John's 24th year with the REDP, which makes him the longest serving staff member in the history of the Richardson Chamber. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. And Susan will start our questions for the panelists.
Well, I think I will go first and kind of set the stage here that I've known each of you on this panel for a very long time, and we weathered a lot of storms, but this is a completely new one. Generally speaking, everybody resists change, and especially sudden change, but we didn't get a vote this time. Friday rolled around, we were told to pack up our things and go home, and we don't know when you'll be back. So companies have managed to get 100% of their workforces working remote, but they're facing huge levels of unpredictability and uncertainty. However, you know, one thing we've learned is to never underestimate the influence of habit formation. So one shoe bomber forever changed the way we get through airport securities. We change and we adapt. But this whole crisis is leaving a lot of questions as companies are looking for new space still unanswered. Team building, productivity hasn't been managed or measured in any way. And companies have been forced to build teams online and are really considering if the big major hubs where they're currently located are necessary to maintain a more remote workforce. So for each of you, we'd like to know, how has this national crisis impacted overall activity in the area of job growth in your region? And what are you hearing and seeing? John, you can start.
Sure, Susan, thank you very much. Pleasure to be with you this morning, and looking forward to a really good conversation. Hopefully a lot of takeaways from the comments that folks will make today. Certainly, if you're talking about net job growth, you know, in the with the pandemic raging, and certainly there have been some business bankruptcies and layoffs and furloughs, and that's impacted the job growth number. But I guess if there's a silver lining to it, in economic development, your existing companies create about 75 to 80% of all of the new jobs. And some of our existing companies, including some here in Richardson, are actually thriving, that there's some facet of this situation that we're in that they have a solution for, and they're hiring more people. I have one company that I spoke with last week that's hiring 40 to 60 new employees a week. So I thought that was a very, very encouraging sign.
I can go next. I can say from the Fort Worth, area perspective, we've seen still a lot of activity in our pipeline. We have over 100 projects in our pipeline. So a lot of companies still looking for information, not a whole lot of site visits, obviously, with the travel restrictions. From the job creation standpoint, to John's point, some companies are hurting, but a lot of companies are thriving. I look at like Renfro Food to make Renfro salsa. They've never been busier, and they're hiring people. We have a lot of Amazon product in the marketplace. They've been hiring like crazy. Walmart.com, the grocery stores. We saw 80% of the job losses really coming from the retail sector, retail and restaurants. And so trying to, displace those people in some different areas like Amazon and things like that. So it's good and bad. We're still waiting to see some impact, obviously from the airline industry. American Airlines is headquartered in Fort Worth. And so we're in constant communication with them, trying to understand, what this is going to look like for them now and going into the future. So we're still wait and see on some of these things, but definitely some of the companies that are existing, especially in the food industry, they are really thriving right now. But again, we're just trying to keep a pulse on all industries, and where can we provide value and resources and support to those companies.
And in Frisco, we've seen an economic impact of the forced closures delay some projects, and especially March, April, May. But beginning in June, we've seen a significant uptick in inquiries. And in addition, the Dallas Regional Chamber and the governor's office have been sending out a number of RFIs. Now, I will say a majority of those have been in the manufacturing sector, but we're working several office-related projects from out of the region, looking at Frisco and the DFW market.
So as the interest in relocating to DFW, is that trending similarly post-COVID as to where you saw this perhaps at the same time, the first part of this year or last year? And when you see an interest in DFW, what are the particular reasons that you're hearing now as a result of that? John?
So, for Richardson, our number one area of the country that has moved companies to Richardson over the years has been California. And that's probably true a lot of the suburban communities in the DFW area. California's business conditions, the taxes and the regulation their businesses are faced with, it makes it just an awful business environment. Almost every company, we've made a number of trips out there, talked to companies, and every one of them is thinking about moving somewhere out of California, not necessarily Texas. So I'd have to say for us, from a historic standpoint, Cisco opened a campus in Richardson in year 2000. Countrywide Financial, you remember them? They opened a campus in Richardson in 2005. We've had other companies, Inogen, CalX, CalAmp, Meta Analytics. And currently we're actually recruiting two California companies to move some operations to Richardson. So that's for us. Who do we compete with for California companies? Well, as you can imagine, we compete with Austin. And so oftentimes, a California company is thinking primarily about Austin, but they're also looking at DFW. And so we've actually compiled a list of, DFW versus Austin. And I would certainly welcome any comments from someone that has some additions to this list. But here's some of the main reasons that we see that you'd want to move a California company to DFW as opposed to Austin. First of all, as the Dallas Regional Chamber has pointed out on a number of occasions, there are almost as many technology jobs in DFW as Austin and Houston combined. So, people don't necessarily think of DFW as a technology hub, but in terms of the number of jobs, it's absolutely there. Another big advantage for DFW is DFW Airport, a hub airport. And I tell people, if you're going to put your California business in Austin, you're going to be flying through DFW Airport many times on your trips to other parts of the U.S. because it is such a tremendous hub. Traffic congestion, don't have to say anything about that. Anybody that's been in Texas for a while knows that Austin has its own unique special set of traffic problems. More moderate home prices now in the DFW area, not greatly so, but to a certain extent. And here's kind of a hidden reason that actually was told to me some years ago by someone who was actually working in the economic development area in Austin. And the comment was, and they were very familiar with DFW as well, their comment was that the work ethic in North Texas is actually stronger than Austin, because in Austin, a lot of the tech workers there are more into their lifestyles. It's all about lifestyle for them, and it's all about, bicycles and playing tennis in the afternoon and things like that kind of go with the job. And the person said, but, in Dallas, you see, office parking lots that are full until 6:30, 7 o'clock. So I think there's something to be said for that. I think there is a strong work ethic here in DFW. And so for that reason and a number of others, I think, DFW should do better in recruiting California companies.
Chris, what are your thoughts?
I agree with everything that John said.
Well, don't do that. He doesn't need to hear that.
John is completely wrong. I don't know what he's talking about. I agree. You look at the airport, look at the infrastructure that we have. I'll throw BNSF, the intermodal facility, and UP's got the intermodal facility, from a manufacturing standpoint. The growth of the region, the tremendous population growth that we have, we're always getting looks just because the availability of workforce and to be honest with you, talking with some of the HQs that relocate into the Fort Worth area, typically it's 10-15% of your staff will relocate with you, but in North Texas it's a lot higher. It's 30-40%, maybe even higher. I had one company that had about 70% of their staff move. So I think that was also something about attracting companies in, because there's a better opportunity of maintaining your existing talent. California, absolutely. We get a lot of calls. In fact, I got a call here later today. Hopefully we're going to finalize another relocation from the Bay Area into the Fort Worth area here in the next month or so. So really excited about that. The other market I would say is Chicago. And we just launched a new website, thriveinfortworth.com. And in fact, in preparation for this meeting, I kind of looked at the different metrics and the visits and whatnot. 15% of all the visits we're getting on that website are from Chicago. And so we're certainly seeing a lot of activity there. And so you look at COVID, you look at some of the unrest in some of these markets. I think you got a lot of companies and a lot of talent that are looking to, maybe we don't need to be there anymore. So that would be another market I would say that is taking a strong look at the DFW area. And again, back to the airport, the connectivity, they have O'Hare, we have DFW, a lot of similarities there, but the growth and the growth in the workforce, and to John's point, just the reliability of that workforce as well.
Susan, I think the DFW region's even better positioned today than pre-COVID. And for the reasons we just addressed, our central location, the talent availability, the university system, we're seeing a lot of traffic and interest from California, but also the Northeast, New York, New Jersey, and Chicago, to Chris's point. And it's not just the attraction from outside. We should never forget the entrepreneurial spirit that we find here. It's as strong or stronger than what you see in Silicon Valley or To John's point, what we're seeing in Austin, that's as critical of a factor in growth in our market here in Frisco with UNT Inspired Park and for the region.
So one thing that we have seen is that companies are in the business of taking risks, but boy, what they hate is uncertainty. And now they're looking at different metrics in their decision-making process. So where a company might have been looking for a dependency on mass transit, now perhaps that's a negative. Where a high-rise office building may have been attractive, now the elevator access might be a negative. But the metrics are really changing. What have you seen as far as the due diligence process, and have you seen a slowdown in decision-making as a result?
We do have one project that we've worked with on for about 6 months. They've actually delayed their evaluation. It was narrowed down to Frisco. They delayed it until January of next year. And they are reevaluating their workforce and work from home concept for their employees. They're looking at a significant reduction of their workforce, which will translate into a smaller square footage footprint at a Frisco location. That all driven by COVID-19. Just from the work from home or work remote concept. It's been around for years, work from home, and a lot of companies have been forced to, the companies that were reluctant to do work from home have been forced to do work from home now in the COVID-19, but it's going to be temporary, and just until a vaccine comes out, I think a wait and see attitude.
Susan, I think you said the key word, and the key word is uncertainty. And businesses, certainly when they're making decisions about relocations or setting up new facilities in other parts of the country, uncertainties really cause some havoc of that decision. But in addition to that, we have a prime example here locally of it was just a kind of a regular run-of-the-mill office lease, and all of a sudden everything was agreed upon, all the terms and conditions, and then the prospective tenant backed away and said, hey, we've got to think through this thing and look at how this is going to affect our business, our need for square footage, how many employees we're going to put in this space, and a whole host of other issues. So uncertainty is really playing a lot of tricks on us right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I've had several projects that have been put on hold, a couple of projects that have been canceled because of this. I have seen that just through the process, a lot more due diligence, and I think that's just because they have a lot more time. Can't travel, can't do some of the things that they have done before. And so let's take this time to really analyze the markets. That way, when we can get back to traveling, we know those markets that we really want to go to and be there. I can say that the COVID has sped up some of the projects. I mentioned the food industry before. I've got a couple of food projects that they are just going gangbusters, and they need to get something done right now. With the lack of site visits, the lack of people being able to come into town has definitely been a challenge for some of these companies. We've done our fair share of virtual site tours with them. We actually have had a couple of companies come in town and do some site tours, and that's been very interesting as we're all in individual cars. So you got a caravan of cars driving down the road going from site to site. But there are some great companies out there still pushing forward, but overall it's just taking a really harder look at the information, so when they can travel, they're ready to go and they have all the information that they need.
Need to be a magnet or a challenge for our region. You've talked some about DFW and about access to higher education and trained workforce, but what about other issues like taxes, schools, and ground transportation?
Who wants to take that?
I could talk to that a little bit. The transportation network in DFW is very strong. You look at a lot of other markets, and traffic is not that big of an issue. But when you look at mass transit, obviously we don't have quite the networks that the Chicagos and New Yorks and other places like that have. They're definitely with the technology companies and some of those companies coming out of the Bay and some different areas that are used to that, and they believe that their workforce needs that type of thing. They take a lot harder look at that, and we obviously don't match up to some of those other markets, but I haven't seen it being a tremendous hindrance. From an educational standpoint, higher ed, we have all kinds of college students, and there's all kinds of opportunity here and all kinds of different programs. So I think that's been good. From an ISD standpoint, it's hit or miss, right? I mean, point at a large urban community and what does their urban school district look like, and how competitive is it, versus what, Dallas ISD or Fort Worth ISD. I think it's just a, continuous conversation that we need to have. We have a partnership with the Fort Worth ISD where we're trying very hard to get them better connected with the private sector and the companies out there so that they understand, they know what are the skill sets, and so they can start moving curriculum around. We just finished a whole series of industry cluster calls with ISD staff and business leaders to talk about this. And so it's been very interesting to see, opening the eyes of the ISDs to see, what are they doing right and what can they improve upon.
So we're seeing that the West Coast is really struggling. There's been a lot of interest in cities that are constantly mentioned as replacement cities for especially some of the West Coast, East Coast. Dallas, Denver, Atlanta, Raleigh continually come up. And San Francisco is a great example. I mean, typically prior to COVID, rents were the highest in San Francisco in any market, rivaling Tokyo, Hong Kong, and London. But with a citywide restriction during this pandemic, their office occupancy has dropped from 90% to 10%. And considering this has given a lot of companies pause, and now they're saying, why do we need to be in this market? Let's look at a more attractive, less expensive market. If our people are going to be remote anyway, why do we need to be in a market as expensive as San Francisco? John, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts are in actually one of the arguments that we use to companies that are thinking about a DFW relocation and are in one of those high cost markets like East Coast, West Coast, is the fact that in most cases and on average, a company will save about a third of its operating costs between lower labor costs and lower real estate costs. And that's pretty compelling. And it seems to work in almost every case. So I think that is the most significant advantage that DFW has.
And Susan, what we're seeing, a lot of IT companies looking at Frisco and coming from the Bay Area or even the Chicago area, you don't have to hot bunk with 10 other roommates in a 2-bedroom apartment. You can afford to buy your own house. I've had a site location consultant for a hotel sector locate in our area. He moved out of a 20-year apartment in San Diego, 1,400 square feet, paying $3,500 a month, buying his own 3,000 plus square foot house for about $2,700 a month. So he's in heaven relocating from the San Diego area. And we're seeing that from other metro areas, if it's New York City or the suburbs in New York City, Chicago, et cetera. That cost factor is important. Something else that's equally important is the safety that you find in our region here compared to some of these other metro areas, especially on the West Coast now.
I've got a question that we can start with Chris. Earlier in 2020, DFW was ranked as number 7 as a leader in skilled technology workers. How will the DFW region position itself to take advantage of this?
Well, I think it's all about, marketing, to the right companies. I would agree. We have I've said it before, a tremendous inflow of skilled and talented people moving into North Texas. And so I think we just need to continue to advertise that, market that to the California, to the Chicagos. Where are those tech companies? And let them know that we have the talent. I mean, before all this started, it was all about talent. Do you have the ability? Do you have the people that are available to make us successful in your community? We can certainly say that, and so we just need to provide some more testimonials, talk to those companies, talk to the peers of the companies that are moving in and get a better understanding of what are the skill sets, and then make sure that we have those and that we're building those skill sets into the future.
Yeah, Chris, I would agree with what Chris says. There's some other things that I think would be important to attract technology type companies. I think the thing that would help the most is to have a major win with a technology relocation company to DFW as opposed to Austin. I'm sure all of you are aware that Tesla is now going to go to Austin, and that's one of many great name technology companies that have gone there. I'm trying to think of a head-to-head that we've had with Austin with a large technology company that we've won. And it's hard to come up with one. So I think that sort of headline does more than anything else to change people's perceptions, and we need to continue to work on that. In the meantime, I'll applaud the Dallas Regional Chamber and the Dallas Innovates publication newsletter that talks about the successes and what's going on within technology within DFW. And once again, like Chris said, it's a matter of marketing and letting people know that technology exists and exists in a big way here in DFW. I know also the Dallas Regional Chamber, as well as Richardson, I think some other cities have special millennial sort of websites or marketing areas to go to let them know that we do have these younger technology workers that a lot of the companies really covet. So I think those sort of efforts are absolutely the right thing to be doing.
Talent's always been the number one driver, whether it's an office location or a manufacturing entity or a warehouse. And all the other positive attributes don't matter about a community anywhere in the nation or the globe if you can't staff. And that's the point. We're demonstrating that we can staff it. We've got 23 public and private universities in the DFW region. The talent is being graduated. And again, to John and Chris's, the population growth here, we have that talent influx into the region.
So the good news about COVID, if there is any, is pre-COVID, we had extremely low unemployment. There's definitely a war for talent going on, and companies were struggling with how to hire people. The changes in this unemployment, city by city, the numbers are lagging behind. So we can't get good numbers yet on exactly what the overall unemployment rates, but by industry, we're seeing, especially retail, hospitality, of course, they really are high. That allows for some transferable labor to be retrained or regrouped. So how do you see these changes in unemployment reflecting positively, and also how has it impacted your economic development approach as it relates to incentives?
Well, I'll kick it off and just say that one of the things that relocating companies like to know, and sometimes they ask, have there been any major layoffs or plant shutdowns recently? Because to them, unemployed workers is a pool of opportunity. It's not a negative, it's a big positive for attracting companies. And the same is true in real estate. Gosh, I remember a time where even today in Richardson, we have about 2.5 million square feet of Class A and Class B office space that's ready to go. And so we have something to show. We have something readily available, move in next week, next month. And so when there is excess capacity, that equals opportunity in a lot of cases.
And I would say from a workforce perspective, it's time to double down on education, because a lot of those folks who have been displaced the retail, the part-time, the hospitality, don't necessarily have the skill sets, available to walk into a manufacturing facility. Now, a lot of these companies will train, but this is why we need to partner with the state in our community colleges and career and technical departments in the ISDs to make sure we have, adult education. And so we can reskill some of these folks and get them back to work.
I'd expect to see a lot of the retail hospitality sector with that training not go back to that, but look at manufacturing as a employment opportunity going forward here.
So the next question has to do
It's
with
impacting incentives overall. Are companies still as aggressively requesting incentives? Or are they understanding that most cities' budgets have been dramatically impacted by COVID as well?
I can start.
When I was to say, when have they never stopped asking?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
We're in a little different situation. Frisco is a 4A community, and that's a little different as far as funding our organization, a little different than the DART member communities, inner ring cities in Dallas. So we still look at the number of jobs, the salaries, the CapEx, the brand, the impact on the community, sales tax generation. We look at all of those factors in evaluating an incentive grant for a company or a development for that matter. So a little different situation. We've seen impact, obviously everyone has from the COVID-19, but it's not as significant as we had worried about.
Yeah, my comment would be that for cities, like Harry mentioned, cities that are in DART and depend on their property tax and sales tax revenue to fund incentives, it gets a little bit more dicey. And of course, the companies are not hesitant to ask. I tell people the number one rule of incentives is ask and you may receive. So, and we have had that, but it's only those exceptional companies that are really game changers that you're going to probably roll out, the full arsenal to recruit them. And I also would say that because of the Texas Enterprise Fund, which is still a tremendous, I think, tool for the state and for all our respective communities, it adds a lot of power to any sort of incentive proposal if the project qualifies for that. I think in Richardson with the Texas Instruments Fab deal, it was done last year, we're over $80 million from the state in TEF money to fund various projects in Richardson. So, and that's during the life of the fund, but still, it's some great tools and whatnot to work with there.
As the only one on the call, that I don't have any incentive programs because I work for the chamber, but I'm working with all the different communities around. And what I've seen to both Harry and John's comments, they're still asking, absolutely, and we're still listening. When it comes to property tax abatements and 380s and things like that, kind of just life is normal and we're cruising forward. But when it comes to the grants, especially coming out of general fund or something like that, the councils, they are coming back and asking the staffs to take a harder look at that. What is, what can be used, what's important, what is life changer, game changer for the project versus, is there other opportunities, other things that we can do to offset some of those costs. So from a grant perspective, definitely taking a harder look at what is the return to the community on that.
Thank you. We wanted to give each of you an opportunity to tell us how you differentiate your city within this large region to prospective companies wanting to relocate.
So this is where we get competitive, right? I'll start off with Richardson. I think a lot of you know Richardson well. And, in the nearly 25 years I've been here, it's always really been about technology. We're just a technology community ever since Texas Instruments and Collins Radio came here back in Collins' case in the 1950s, TI. in the 50s as well. So that's still prevalent. We're not a totally telecom corridor now. We've diversified. We still have technology, but the other two primary tech sectors are software and semiconductor. Of course, TI is building its second RFAB, million square feet here in Richardson. It's about a 2-year construction process. Another factor, University of Texas at Dallas in Richardson, 30,000 students and one of the really premier technology universities now in DFW, just growing like a weed. Certainly, I think transportation infrastructure has always been a key for our community, and being able to get people from one place to the other. And now with DART, we will have 6 DART rail stations. We have 4 currently, and then December of 22, we'll open up the Silver Line that'll take you from Richardson, Plano out to DFW Airport. And there will also be a station at UT Dallas as well. So those are the main things. In my perspective, for a technology company in DFW, I mean, Richardson is a terrific spot to be.
Frisco, we continue to seek regional and corporate headquarter locations. At present, we're about 72% built out as a community. So we have room to continue the growth spurt we've seen over the past decades here in the community. We have a number of projects underway, the Keurig Dr. Pepper headquarters location, the PGA of America, the Burt Fields acreage, over 2,500 acres being developed by Hunt. Frisco Station has a spec office building, 210,000 square feet under construction. The Star has plans to do a 300,000 square foot Class A office spec as well. And Stonebrook Business Park has a 90,000 square foot spec on the ground now. So a great deal of spec office construction. Medical City, Frisco, an area we haven't even touched on. All 3 of our communities and all of the DFW region strong in the medical sector. They have a 170,000 square foot office ambulatory building office complex finishing construction here in Frisco. So I think we're well positioned with talent, again, access to the airport, our fiber connection here in Frisco. Again, all across the region are critical and importance to companies looking. I will say we always sell the DFW region first. We're competitive as partners. We all know each other very strongly in the DFW market, but we're pushing DFW as a region first and primary. So we're open in Frisco. We've got the space. We've got the talent. Come see us.
Our differentiating factor is my sparkling personality. Obviously, I mean, everybody wants to work with me. I mean, I could walk around, the region. We could talk about Alliance. We can talk about BNSF. We can talk about, our downtown, the access to talent, access to the airport. I mean, a lot of the same things, that these gentlemen have talked about. I would say some of the secret sauce that we have is our business community. And engaging our business leaders to be part of the process and have the conversations with folks when they're in town, or just getting them on the phone to talk with those companies. Because at the end of the day, I mean, we're the sales guys, right? We're the marketing people, and they want to hear from their peers. And so we've got a great network of business leaders, CEOs, HR professionals, whatever that is, in our community that is at the table with us and helping us send the message and talking to them about how they can be successful. So they're hearing it peer-to-peer versus from us all the time.
Thank you.
Each of you is on the front end of talking to corporate executives, sometimes well before the relocation is even a process. The Wall Street Journal had an interesting article this week that said, after a survey of executives, the results really showed this: projects are taking longer, collaboration is harder, training new workers is a struggle, building teams online is new, no one has ever done this before, and young people, young professionals aren't developing to the extent their coworkers are by being remote. This is not going to be sustainable. curious what your thoughts are and if you're hearing something similar from companies you're talking to.
Well, I'll kick it off. Yes, I mean it's not sustainable. You know, not being in person, you lack the collaboration. We were just having this conversation the other day about, as we're looking at potentially adding some staff to us. How do you train somebody, you know, through this, you know, and the different software platforms and things like that? It's hard to do remotely, and you can have these conversations all the time, but that personal interaction is the way to grow yourself as a professional and train new folks. So I don't think it's sustainable at all. And I hear, you know, from a lot of folks that, you know, this is great. It was great in the beginning, but now we're starting to hit a rut, you know, and we need to get back in the office, or we need to do something differently because we're just not developing the talent that we need. And we're not having the conversations, the collaboration, the outside the box thinking through this type of conversation versus in person.
Yeah, I agree with Chris's perspective on that. I would tell you, we've surveyed a number of our employers about various questions related to their workforce. I think, you know, what COVID did cause is this grand experiment in working from home. I know it's been talked about for a number of years, but now almost everybody had to do it, and there were just some essential workers left in the office. Even today, I understand that on average, about 10% of the pre-COVID workforce is actually in the office. The rest is working from home. And some of our companies, some of our larger companies, have done surveys of all their employees or had voluntary, you know, come back to the office days set up. And 10% of them, in some cases, or less than 10%, actually want to return to the office. So I think there's going to be some management and employee issues perhaps coming up on that one. As Chris said, you know, the collaboration, and I think particularly as you get into, you know, really advanced, you know, technology or whatever, the ability of, you know, engineers to get together and really discuss different ideas and so forth. It's really important to do in person. On the other hand, there are other types of positions within any company that could be done just as well from home. And so I think the future is a lot more work from home sort of activity. And that's going to impact commercial real estate and a whole host of other things.
Susan, I think it's again Susan and Ian, I think it's all driven by vaccine. My prediction is a two-part prediction. 2 years from now, companies are still going to have their employees working from the office. The other half of that prediction is 2 years from now, we will have all forgotten about COVID-19 and everyone will be back in the office. Just to summarize that, I don't think we really know what's going to happen 2 years from now in the office utilization market or the workplace. Obviously, manufacturing, lab workers, they can't work remotely. They have to be on the production floor. They have to be in the lab. A lot of office functions. Again, my wife's a medical coder. She could work from home. Her particular employer, she goes in, whatever reason, if that's good or bad, doesn't matter. That's a decision, but companies will make those types of decisions going forward. Again, 2 years from now, who knows what the market's going to be. I think the pendulum will swing back to the middle. Again, with the vaccine, we'll be back in the office place.
So the last question has to do with the 2020 IEDC conference. That was a real coup for that conference to be scheduled in Dallas and was going to bring a lot of international attention to our region. Are you aware if this is going to be postponed or possibly changed to a virtual event?
It's still scheduled for October the 11th to the 14th. I know a number of organizations, the TEDC, they've gone to a virtual conference for the summer. October, if I were to bet, I would say it'd go virtual, but I'm not on the committees deciding that. I know a lot of companies, you look at the big three automakers, a lot of their people are being work remote decisions through the first of next year. Google, Twitter, Shopify, a lot of folks have said they're not bringing people back until next year. As far as hosting conferences, I'm on the board of directors for the Japan America Society. Our annual conference was in October, and we've canceled that.
And I heard just a day or two ago that I think the IEDC is going to be virtual. The silver lining is that there's a chance that we could do it in DFW in, I think, 2023 or whenever the next available date comes up, so that we could get people here to see our fantastic Metroplex. But I think this year is going to be virtual.
No, I believe you're right, John. I got that email as well that looks like it's going to be a virtual event. And, how it's such a shame because, it'd be great to have a lot of our peers in the market and experiencing the North Texas market. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. So we'll just have to do our best, to separate ourselves. Like the previous question, how do we separate ourselves and promote North Texas being on a Zoom call? That's the challenge and something that we'll all be thinking about.
Well, we'll look forward to 2023.
And Harry, we're going to quote you on your predictions and state that 50% of the people will be back to work and that you're not worried about murder hornets or bunny Ebola or anything else. Way. So from Jeff Pappas, one of my longtime partners, what type of firms do each of you see with active RFPs, relocation requests? Is it e-commerce? Is it regional or corporate headquarters, back office, 3PLs? Just percentage-wise, what are you seeing most interest in the DFW region?
Right now, like I said, I've got about 110 projects in the pipeline right now, and about 70 of those have come in since March 1. It's just been tremendous. Lots of manufacturing. We still have some office projects that we're working on, relocations and back office types of things. Those have slowed down a little bit because John's point earlier, everybody's kind of looking at their space needs. What do we actually need? How many people are we going to be bringing? How many people are we going to be hiring? But manufacturing, very strong. I've mentioned it a couple times. Food, I've got a ton of food projects, a lot of interest there. Cold storage, lots of interest in cold storage. So I would say that manufacturing definitely is monopolizing my pipeline right now.
Yeah, I'd say in Richardson it's probably information technology. In the last couple of years, Infosys and Genpact have had a major presence here. RealPage, another kind of IT software company. So it's quite a cluster in Richardson. We're getting more activity in that sector.
We're still seeing office, regional corporate headquarters, IT related, a lot of innovation related firms looking at Frisco. And to a lesser extent, we're not noted as a manufacturing location. Star Business Park is seeing a lot of attractiveness for small to medium sized manufacturing entities here in Frisco.
I see another question from Jim Brettenfield. In addition to work from home, I think work near home will be increasingly adopted in corporate real estate footprints, and DFW is well situated with many brands and sites that offer co-working and executive suite space compared to other markets. Would you care to comment on that?
Everything that I hear, and these aren't, my ideas, but I think some of the major brokerage firms have done various webinars, and the idea of flexibility, short lease terms, not longer than 2 years, co-working space, kind of space in a bottle as you need it. I don't know what kind of effect. I mean, is the 10-year lease going to be a thing of the past? How is that going to change commercial real estate? There's a lot of unknowns in that area. I'd be a little bit concerned if I owned office buildings right now.
Yeah, I know that I can say from an investment standpoint, talking with some of the investment groups out there, I mean, there's still money out there for industrial buildings, still money out there for multifamily. Office, good luck getting a dime, trying to build an office building right now. It doesn't exist. I agree. I think there's too much uncertainty. Companies are looking at it on every angle that they can. Do we need less space? Do we need more space so when we bring people back, we have, them separated? Is it co-working? Is it working from home? Yeah, some functions can be done from home, but others cannot. So what does that really look like? I think everything's just up in the air right now. It's a wait and see.
Chris, you mentioned your focus on manufacturing and worth with the intent of the government to try to bring back manufacturing to the U.S. Are you seeing that's the case? I know companies are trying to reduce their dependency on China for goods and services, and we anticipate that that's going to be good news for our ports and for a lot of our local markets. Are you seeing that impact?
Yeah, to some extent. Obviously, there's a lot of folks out there that want to do the mask production and sanitizers. You saw those distilleries that moved over and changed their product line. Still, I am seeing some of that. Stanley Black & Deckers is a great example, even though that was pre-COVID, bringing that Craftsman line back from China. I think there is that reshoring aspect out there, and this has only strengthened the market for it.
John, what are you seeing?
I'm sorry. Give me the background on this one. I was looking at some of the other questions.
I'm sorry. Did you doze off there for a minute? Are you playing chess online? Is that what you're doing?
You missed my brilliant statement, John.
With companies looking to move their operations back to the U.S. to reduce their dependency on China and other markets, are you seeing that more often?
Not being a manufacturing center, we don't see a lot of it here in Richardson. We have some outstanding manufacturing companies like Ventahood that's been around since the 1930s, and certainly Fujitsu, Network Communications makes all kinds of telecom gear, but on the whole, we are not as manufacturing heavy as some communities. I don't see that trend yet, that reshoring trend. I've not run across a deal yet that has that flavor, but I do think it's going to happen. I'm a believer that companies are going to, and the thing is, it was always about efficiency, in other words, proximity and cost, and now security and sustainability is becoming a major factor in the three. And so I'm hopeful that a lot of that will come back to the U.S.
The supply chain is a critical component of that, what John's talking about. Again, Frisco's not a strong manufacturing location, but we do have Solaris, which is a company of LED lighting. They actually made a decision to move back a portion of their operation pre-COVID-19 to Star Business Park.
Excellent. We have one more question. What is the greatest expense to a company relocating or moving to Texas?
I would say it's maybe not a cost, but it's your people. If you're relocating, there are certain people that you want to come, and it's the cost of moving those folks. But if they don't come, you've got to replace those people. And so it's not a cost, if you will, but it's certainly a major decision-making factor. Are my people coming, or can I find the talent to be successful here?
Yeah, Chris, that's a good point. And I've just been wondering in my own mind, typically when companies relocate, particularly across the country, they keep 10-15% of their workforce, go with them, the rest stay where they are. But now in the era of work from home, is that going to change? Is it possible that the company can keep a lot of its people in their current location and move everything else to Texas, to DFW?
Interesting.
Have you been asked yet to do any virtual site tours of your region or area?
Yeah, I've done several, both from a labor market standpoint of just getting Zoom calls with HR professionals, Had one group that literally, flew a drone around a manufacturing building, and we watched it on, on our computers. So yeah, we've done several of those actually, and we've had some in-person visits, like I said before. But the virtual tour is what you got to do right now while people can't travel.
Susan, I haven't done a virtual tour yet, but I'm boning up on Google Maps so I can use that in the Zoom call. Share
Well,
that.
ask Chris if you can borrow his drone.
Okay.
We've simply connected information online in a Microsoft Teams or Zoom meeting, sharing on screen information about particular properties.
Well, Kristen, I think we're going to hand back to you for the wrap up because I think we're just about finished.
Thank you so much for the insight.
Yeah, this was a really great discussion. Thank you everyone so much. And thank you everyone for joining. I'm going to send the recording out later today. I think this is one that people want to send around and maybe even watch again. So I know I learned a lot. So thank you everyone, and have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I know.